Welcome, welcome. Recently, I've been doing a lot of interviews with professors around America, around 200 professors. Now I think we're approaching 210, 220. These professors were experts on political polarization, and they came from universities in the middle of America, the Deep South, the North, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, the East Coast, the West Coast. Some were liberal, some were conservative, some were from conservative institutions, some were from liberal institutions. Some were economists, some were political scientists, some were psychologists, and some were social psychologists, and some were sociologists. I've been able to compile all of their observations into a book, which I'm attempting to get published very soon. That book will be called Standing on the Deck of the Titanic, Talking to Giants. Actually, Talking to Giants Standing on the Deck of the Titanic. It's very imagery specific. Anyways, I wanted to start taking things that I had learned from the research in the book and applying them to real world examples so that people could see videos and go, oh, that's an example of polarization and why it's bad. So I wanted to take something that would be controversial today, and I wanted to point out something that basically no one in the news is pointing out at all, that political polarization is bad. And an example of how that's happening, an example of how the country's coming apart in a way that people may not typically see. And this would allow me to highlight the observations from the book and prove that the book had important observations to make. So let's dive right into it. This is Political Polarization Explained with your host, Mark Ruiz-Evans. That's myself. Today's episode is Where There Should Be Natural Allies, You Will Only Find Enemies, or where natural allies should be found, only enemies will be made. That's the point of today's show. Let's get right to it. Now on the top is Ashley Babbitt, wearing a Trump hat, and Hunter Biden, son of the current president, Joseph R. Biden. Hunter Biden will have his guns taken away. That came out recently in the news. The Republicans have worked very hard to make sure that Joseph Biden was tried for improperly filing a gun authorization form. So Hunter Biden wrote on his official paperwork to have a gun that he did not take drugs. Then they had evidence that Hunter Biden was taking drugs during that same time. And so the Republicans were able to say, well, therefore you lied on an official form for the gun, and that is a crime, which it technically is. What's interesting, though, is that this is not really done, to the best of my knowledge. This is a high-profile case, and it's kind of a unique case. Now, maybe cases like it have been done before in the past, but it's not that popular and ubiquitous, and this appears to be the most high-profile, publicized version of taking someone's gun away because they didn't file the forms properly or they lied on the forms. So Hunter Biden will have his guns taken away. The Republicans, because they did this, have created a legal precedent for taking someone's guns away. The National Rifle Association is already worried that medical marijuana users could have their guns taken away already. This case against Hunter Biden only strengthens the legal liability. I was talking to some Democrats who I work with who are running for office in other parts of America, and they were pointing out how this could be a really bad idea for the Republicans. The Republicans have ran on the idea that they are pro-gun and they don't want anybody coming to take away your guns. Second Amendment, it's part of your freedom. Well, now the Republicans have worked to take someone's gun away, thereby creating a legal precedent to do that. We already have a legal problem where people with medicinal marijuana cards have admitted that they're using a drug. Some of those people have applied for guns and have them. And on those gun permits, they had to put they were not taking drugs. So what they're pointing out now is if you have a medicinal marijuana card and you have a gun registration form, you have lied on your gun registration form, just like Hunter Biden, because you have admitted with the medical marijuana card that you're on drugs, which means anybody with a medicinal marijuana card and a gun registration could have their guns confiscated from them based upon a legal precedent created by the party that historically has stood for gun rights and no one taking away your guns. That's the irony. Republicans are celebrating Hunter Biden's loss rather than protesting it. They should be protesting it. In a normal, functional world, where we didn't have extreme political polarization, the Republican Party probably would not have gone through with this case on Hunter Biden to take away his guns. And if some of them did, others of them would be criticizing it because this is the party that stood for freedom. Basically, no one in the Republican Party is criticizing this at all. That should not seem too strange. The Republican Party did the same thing with the abortion decision. Again, another sign of a broken political system. So when Roe v. Wade happened and abortion was overturned, a lot of Republicans rejoiced. The Supreme Court said that it will be kicked back to the states, and individual states will make the decision on if abortion should be legal or not. At that time, Mike Pence, who was the vice president, or former vice president, said that there should be an immediate national abortion ban, and that the Supreme Court returning the power of deciding abortions to the states is not good enough, and there should be a national abortion ban. No Republican criticized him. And here's the problem. The Republicans should have criticized Pence if we lived in a normal political time. The Republican Party has stood for states' rights for decades. When the Supreme Court returned the abortion decision to the states, that was in line with traditional Republican thinking. However, Pence wanted to make it a national abortion ban so that he could secure the Christian right. The Republicans did not disagree with him because it was better that they had the right aligned against the left than that they were true to their belief system. And the reason that I bring that up is we're seeing this again. The Republicans have said, hey, we're the party of guns. Don't take away our guns. And then they took away Hunter Biden's guns and created a legal precedent to do this to hundreds, if not thousands, of other Americans. The Republican Party said, we're the party of states' rights. And then the moment there was a huge states' rights decision, they immediately reversed it and said, not good enough. We want to force the decision on all the states. On the other hand, that's not that strange, because when you consider that the Black Lives Matter movement did the exact same thing with Ashley Babbitt. So Ashley Babbitt was a MAGA supporter who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. She was shot and killed by a police officer or law enforcement officer at the time. That videotape was made by a Black Lives Matter activist. Yes, the videotape of Ashley Babbitt going to the Capitol and being shot, to the best of my knowledge, was made by a Black Lives Matter activist, an African-American man, who also said afterwards that her shooting death was wrong and should not have happened and excessive by law enforcement. And yet there was basically no support by the Black Lives Matter at all for Ashley Babbitt. Here was a person gunned down unnecessarily by law enforcement. And the law enforcement person, no trial, and they basically just got off scot-free. That's literally what Black Lives Matter was talking about. Law enforcement gunning down people when it was not necessary and getting away scot-free. And yet Black Lives Matter could not do anything to support Ashley Babbitt, even though the person filming Ashley Babbitt was himself a Black Lives Matter activist who also said it was wrong. Not good enough to get the Black Lives Matter support. And that's because we live in polarized times. It's not important to stand up for your beliefs. It's important to stand up for your tribe. So Black Lives Matter could not support Ashley Babbitt, even though she was basically in the same issue base that they were, because she was on the other side. And they couldn't support her, even though BLM activists said her death was wrong. Only one article for Black Lives Matter and the fact they should support Ashley Babbitt ever appeared in America. And only one Republican has said that taking Hunter Biden's guns away is wrong. That is the example for you. If the system worked, BLM would be backing Ashley Babbitt, or at least half of them, or it'd be an internal debate. Republicans would have argued with Pence for pushing a national abortion ban, and Republicans would have at least been half of them turning on the other Republicans who took away Hunter Biden's guns. None of that's happening. And what I'm trying to point out is that we have political ideas, which is fine, but they're not consistent. They are, I'm for my political idea as long as it helps my tribe, and when it doesn't, I don't care. I stick to helping my tribe. Which means all these political forces aren't really about politics, but about tribalism. And that was the point of the show, to show a breakdown in America. These are examples of polarization that aren't working. Before political polarization was very bad, a lot of professors told me that you used to have conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans, and now you have none. It's all conservative Republicans, all liberal Democrats. There used to be conservative Democrats. middle of the road Democrats. Liberal Republicans, middle of the road Republicans. And that was a healthy political system. While generally the Republicans were conservative, Democrats were generally liberal, there were points of overlap. Now there's none. That same system is happening here. There's no overlap. It's completely segregated, even though there should be overlap because they're talking about similar issues. Let me show you some of the evidence for this. Here is Politico. Could Hunter Biden be the next poster child for Second Amendment rights? President's son is under investigation for potentially breaking a law banning drug users from owning guns, but the law constitutionally faces growing challenges. Hunter Biden could soon find himself a surprising position at the cutting edge of the fight to strengthen the Second Amendment. The president's son is the target of a Justice Department investigation scrutinizing his purchase of a gun in 2018, a time he said when he said he was regularly using crack cocaine. But the constitutionality of that law, like many other provisions restricting gun ownership, is newly in question after a president-rocking decision the Supreme Court handed down almost a year ago. His lawyers have already told the Justice Department officials that if their client is charged with the gun crime, they will challenge the law under the Second Amendment, according to a person familiar with the private discussions granted anonymity because they're not authorized to speak publicly. That could turn a case that is already fraught with political consequences into a high-profile showdown over the right to bear arms. The dispute would come as the White House fights to tighten gun laws, and it could put conservative gun right enthusiasts who typically criticize Biden family in an unusual alignment with the president's son. There you go. Politico's talking about that, but basically nobody else is. So that should tell you something. Politico saying, here's a way why the Republicans might have to back Hunter Biden. They're the only ones doing it. Here's a little bit about the marijuana and guns, how Ohio 2 will affect your gun rights. DOJ prosecuting pot-using gun owners despite state legalization, like we're talking about. Here's Bank of America, NRA, and MasterCard are lobbying for marijuana banking. The NRA does not have an official stance on marijuana. However, David Keene, who served as the NRA's president until 2013, expressed a concern about how federal restrictions criminalizing medicinal marijuana patients are causing significant issues. He wrote that the federal government's refusal to align with state decisions on the matter has created problems for many gun owners. So here's the NRA recognizing people are going to have their guns taken away because they're medicinal marijuana users. Here's gun users who are marijuana users, medicinal marijuana users, having their guns taken away. It's already happening. And here's the evidence of how the Republicans should be backing Hunter Biden. Now, when we look at the reality of these decisions, here is the BLM activist who filmed Ashley Babbitt. I don't think she deserved to die. Activist who filmed Ashley Babbitt speaks out. So that's the BLM activist, black man, filmed Ashley Babbitt. I don't think she should die. Also participated in BLM protests. Here's the Justice Department closing the investigation into the death of Ashley Babbitt. They're going to do absolutely nothing to the law enforcement officer who did that. Our first martyr, how Ashley Babbitt is being turned into a far-right recruiting tool. So Ashley Babbitt should have had some support by BLM. She got almost completely none. Instead, she was a far-right tool. Imagine if half of BLM was backing her. They wouldn't be able to say she's all far-right. Now they can. This is the bifurcation. The Ashley Babbitt Standard Opinion. This is the one news article that mentioned this. For those who have followed news coverage of police shootings of unarmed civilians in the last few years, Capitol Hill Police Lieutenant Michael Byrd's interview with NBC News had a familiar ring. The officer voiced his fears about the situation he faced on January 6th. He had no idea if the intruders were armed or if they posed an actual physical threat. In the chaos of the moment, Byrd said he thought lives would be at risk if he didn't act. So Newsweek, and this article was the only article of all newspapers in all of America to say there should be a link between BLM and Ashley Babbitt, and there's none. One on news article got it. One and only one Republican got it. A lot of Republicans criticized it. They celebrated Hunter Biden's conviction, And here we go. Hunter Biden sparks celebration. GOP giving mixed messages on Hunter Biden's gun conviction. Gun rights-minded Republicans are still supporting the verdict, though. Asked if Hunter Biden shouldn't be convicted because the gun laws should not exist. Lauren Boebert said, well, they do exist and he's not above the law. Good spin, though, said Boebert. It's not spin. They were calling you out on inconsistency. One and only Republican one got it, and that's Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie was the only person to say Hunter Biden might deserve to be in jail for something, but purchasing a gun is not it. There are millions of marijuana users who use guns in this country. None of them should be in jail for purchasing or possessing a firearm against current laws. One and only one Republican said, this is not something we should celebrate because it's against our values. One and only one newspaper said, isn't it weird that this is kind of the same concept as BLM? And yet nobody else in America backed that. No one in BLM and no other Republicans backed not celebrating the Hunter Biden verdict. Pence called for a national abortion ban, which is against states' rights and is not criticized. There's Mike Pence doing that. He was not criticized by Republicans. Oh, and here's another example. Democrats, right after Roe v. Wade, said they were disgusted with the return to allowance for abortion, return to blocking abortion. And then, right when I'm making a show, please stop. Okay. And then the Democrats a coalition of progressive groups, including Planned Parenthood and NARAL Pro-Choice America, issued a statement of principles, challenging the party to be unwavering in its support of abortion rights. The latest brush fires were sparked this week by the DCC chairman, Rep. Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, when he told the Hill newspaper that the committee is willing to aid candidates who oppose abortion rights. So the Democrats talked about how they were horrified that abortion was taken away as a right. And then they went and backed abortion candidates in areas they thought they would lose. The system worked. BLM should back Ashley Babbitt. Republicans should have attacked Pence. Democrats should have fired leaders for backing abortion. Republicans should not celebrate Hunter Biden having his guns taken away. The fact that these did happen means these are examples of tribalism. When America was less polarized, you'd have overlaps between these different movements. The fact that you don't now is a sign of broken political polarization. We'll be back with more.